Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, and welcome to the Future Tech Podcast. I'm Alan Thomas, and today I have Courtney Morris with me, co-founder of Artifacts. How you doing, Courtney?
I'm doing very well. Nice to talk to you today.
Oh, cool. Let's get right into it. Tell us about Artifacts. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, there's five of us who co-founded Artifacts, and we're kind of veterans in the broader information and analytics space. We spent a lot of time at Thomson Reuters, where we had all worked together at some point. And we had identified during that time, some issues in the scholarly communication space, so publishing and the publishing process. These are, relatively well known in the industry, from reputation and recognition, research integrity, peer review, reproducibility, length of time, things like that. And because we had also worked with Gene Garfield, who is considered the godfather of bibliometrics, we had a certain appreciation for citations and how researchers use citations as the currency of the industry. They kind of pay it forward. They give citations whose work they've leveraged. And, so we're kind of coming at it from that angle, but we thought that in today's world with new technology, there's a lot of things that we could improve. So we founded Artifacts to try to do a couple of...
And how long has the company been around now?
We were officially incorporated in November of 2017, and we had been working, designing and thinking and kind of structuring, a good chunk of time before that. But we officially, kind of jumped in and then started developing product and put up a website and, got ourselves funded. And we did launch our first product on March 19th, actually, at the Population Health Colloquium in Philadelphia. So that was a day for us.
Oh, well, congrats on that. And can you maybe tell us a little bit about the product itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me, just back up just a little bit because it might help. Some of those macro problems that I talked about, we come at it from the perspective of that a lot of those challenges often emanate from the constraining nature of the current publishing cycle. So researchers start a process of research and they start to build artifacts. Artifacts of research was kind of how we got our name. We decided we'd start calling it Artifacts. But, they build all these pieces of work, doing research, observations, posters, presentations, et cetera. And then, ultimately they start to, narrow that down to get to a published article. And what happens along the way is a lot of good work kind of gets lost into dark knowledge because the industry focuses so much on just a published article. We want to, at some level, shift the lens from it's only the published article that matters to it's everything that is good in a research project that matters. So we're really trying to liberate a lot of that knowledge, give researchers an incentive to share their in-process work because we can make it easy, safe, and beneficial to do so, and then thereby they can build their reputations in real time, and we can build a much better knowledge base of all of these pieces of research work linked and indexed and findable, and do so, again, in real time instead of at the end of a long publishing cycle. So the product that we launched is a collaborative platform that was designed specifically for research. Many people in your audience may know the Center for Open Science, and they've got a platform called OSF. And when we worked with COS, Center for Open Science, in terms of, how could we use that? Could we use it? And it's an open source platform. So they were great to work with and helped us kind of set up a version of that. And then we started developing on top of that with a lot of different capabilities and functionality. That's in line with our vision. And so the platform we launched then, free, it's available. You could go to artifacts.ai and then hit the Go to System button, and you'll go right into the system where researchers can set up a project, manage collaborators, set up file structures, link a lot of workflow tools that they may already be using, like Mendeley or Zotero, or Google Drive, for example. But then importantly, we've made it easy to establish provenance for their work. So they can very easily, with a click or two, establish a proof of existence of any file and post that on the distributed ledger, so timestamp with a hash. And then they can also provide citations or attributions to other researchers for other work, and that also posts onto the distributed ledger and then is able to be counted real time. So that was the quick kind of high-level version of the platform.
So it sounds like a lot of it is about making sure that the surrounding knowledge that helped to make these published pieces don't get lost in the cracks.
Yeah, that's correct. And so by being able to kind of prospectively establish these linkages and make the other good work that builds up to a published article available, what you get is comprehensive and prospective indexing. All of these various artifacts are linked and searchable. You can have a proof of origin or established and immediately put on the distributed ledger, and then manageable by the creator of the owner. And then the attributions or citations, those can happen at any point in time across the research process. And then that provides just much more timely recognition and the building of reputation. It also does create a better data set or kind of fact-based people to ultimately assess scholarly contribution. Because right now, your scholarly contribution is really, to a large extent, kind of measured and then assessed through citations that cycle through one of the commercial indexers, WebAssign or Scopus. And, those happen multiple years after the fact in a process that is, retrospectively making some of these linkages. And, so it's error prone, it's subject to breaks, and then it's just very slow. And so, I think we come at this in the perspective look in today's technology. There's no reason for that, kind of lag time. There's no reason for that process. These things ought to be able to happen concurrently with research. And we ought to ultimately speed research up because now there's more things that can be found, collaborators can be identified or found, and then, you can build this cycle of iteration, much faster.
And having the scholarly attribution process accelerated like that, what kind of effects would that have for the particular researchers?
Well, just as an example, if you are a young researcher and you're on one of your first research projects, and that takes you however long it might take you. It might take you a year, it might take you 18 months or 2 years to do your research, and then you've got to then submit it through a cycle to get it. Submit it to a publisher and see if you can get it published. And then what typically happens is that process could take 6 to 18 months in itself, kind of depending. It's sometimes a little discipline specific, but it gets submitted, and then if it gets accepted, then there's usually some revisions before it gets accepted, and then it goes through a peer review process, and sometimes there's some revisions there, and then ultimately it gets published. So you could be anywhere from whatever the case, 18 to 36 months in a process there. So now you're a young researcher, you've worked for 2 to 3 years, but you still have no citations. If you get published, and you get published in a journal that gets picked up by one of the indexers, and those indexers cover roughly 20% of the journals that are out there, so you have to be in one of those journals in order to be indexed. Then somebody else, in your field or an interdisciplinary project could pick up your research, see it, use it, and cite it. But then they've got to go through their own publishing cycle. So then that research has to be completed, accepted, and published and indexed. So you're 2 full publishing cycles before you might get a citation. So think about that as a young researcher. You've been cranking away for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And you still have no formal recognition for the work you've been doing. To us, that just makes no sense. If in the artifact system, you start your research and you could start making, you could make your grant proposal public. You could then put your protocols out. You could put your research design. You could put early data sets. You could, you could put observations or images or whatever. And if if other people in your field or others, then can find that because you've made it public and we're indexing it, in real time, so that it, becomes findable very quickly. Then they pick that up and they use it in their project. They can process an attribution for that right then. So then what happens? You get notified that, hey, I just got a citation from a project over in Australia. Well, okay, so that's great. You just got validation that something that you did was good. But you also now just found out about some people in real time who are doing a similar thing. So, okay, now you might reach out to them. You might be able to find something to collaborate on. You might be able to iterate faster. But then also other people might find some of the other stuff you do. So by the time it comes to submitting a manuscript, you may have already built, a reasonable profile of people having already found your good work, leveraged it in their projects, and then also provided you attribution. So it shows that along the way, you're building a good reputation because you're doing good work and other people are recognizing it. So, that for an individual researcher, there's a lot to be gained by being on a more prospective and real-time system.
Okay, and as a young researcher, let's say I'm a young researcher coming to Artifacts, how do I get started in using it?
Well, so you could just go to artifacts.ai and hit go to system, and then you would register, and you could use your ORCID ID if you have one, or you could just provide an email, and then you name a project, you start setting it up, you add your collaborators, you invite them to the project. You could build various components into that project, and a file structure for places to put some of the work, and provide a little detail in the wiki, and then as you are managing those collaborators, you're also giving them the various rights depending on what they do. You're defining their roles, giving a little more descriptive kind of metadata towards who these contributors are and what role they're playing and where, and that also helps in this kind of indexing, searching, and finding, because then if you have set up a project like that and somebody else is searching for somebody who did the software, for example, or they did the data curation or whatever, then you can more easily find the other people who have done something like that, because we've provided the ability to add a little more descriptive nature. And then also similarly, on the citation side, current citations are very binary. You either got one or you didn't get one. But here we're adding a little more dimensionality so that you can, they could be a little more descriptive of, was it an affirming citation? Was it a dissenting citation? Was it for software? Was it for data? Adding a little more, kind of just metadata and, descriptive nature to help people narrow down exactly what they're looking for. But, then again, as a researcher coming in, you continue to manage your collaborators, your file structures, and, then you can do the proof of existence on anything at any time so that you can establish provenance, make those hashes and post that to the distributed ledger, again, giving you a timestamp of the work that you and your team are doing. But then, very easily, whether you're using Mendeley or Zotero or ultimately EndNote or whatever tools there might be to manage other references, you can link those into the system very easily, similarly with Google Drive or Amazon or Dropbox or most of the storage things, GitHub, etc. And then manage your various outputs in that way, but very easily establish your proof of existence and your provenance, and then share whenever you feel like sharing. You don't just by establishing a proof of existence, it doesn't mean it's public. You have to say, hey, yeah, I want to make this public so that other people can find it, but that's fairly intuitively and easily done in the platform.
Okay, and during the period that it took to put together the product itself and the company, what are some of the challenges that you and your team have had to overcome to get to this point?
Well, look, we're still early, so I'd say there are more challenges than there are successes to date. I mean, we feel good that we've got a product launched, and we're out there interacting with researchers in the community, and And we've had a very good time in several of the conferences, speaking and educating and talking about this. And this is one of the largest challenges. This is a platform and an approach and a vision that requires network effect. So we have to get enough researchers to kind of buy into our vision, buy into the concept of, hey, it's better to share than to hold. Hey, I get that a more comprehensive reputational profile is better than the current system, and so that's really the big hurdle. Is we got to get a couple sparks just in terms of building that usage. So what a lot of what we've been doing is establishing some early partnerships that can help build a little credibility, help get the name out a little bit, and of course on the various social platforms, engaging as much as possible with the various communities to kind of build the name. We've done a couple very interesting and early partnerships. So Blockchain in Healthcare Today is a journal that's going to be using the Artifacts platform with their authors and researchers. Telehealth and Medicine Today, same thing. So those authors and people associated with the publishing process in those journals will be using the Artifacts platform, and then we've got a working group set up to kind of study the differences between the various processes, pluses and minuses, and then also help shape and guide some of the priorities on the development of the platform. We are a founding member of the International Society of Blockchain for Science. We did that a couple weeks ago with a larger group. We met in Vienna and in Switzerland several weeks ago, and then we're also a member of the Sovereign Trust Network. Sovereign is a self-sovereign identity protocol that's blockchain-based, and as you might imagine, their identity is a real big and important issue as it relates to researchers. Just making sure you know who's who and you disambiguate. And Dave Kachalko, who's one of our founding team members, he was a co-founder of Orchid. And so we will be speaking more with Orchid in terms of how to deploy the great success that they've had with Orchid, and then maybe augment that with some more very specific identity management solutions that we think are possible with the Sovereign protocol.
And so during the course of developing the product, of developing Artifacts, were there ever any ideas for features of it that maybe made you say, well, that might be a little bit too much for right now, or maybe in a later version, it might just be too soon to do it?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, look, we've got a long list of things we'd love to do that we just they have to kind of get in a staging line. So we got a big backlog of stuff we want to do. We're working aggressively on a couple key priorities. One is, I mentioned the making it easy and going to where the researchers are in terms of the workflow tools that they have. So one of our key priorities, working on those integrations, those API hooks, or those Chrome add-ons, or other ways for us to widgets and other ways for us to plug into some of the tools that are out there, whether that's Google Docs or whether it's some of the kind of middleware players that might be coming from some of the other software providers. We want to be able to hook in there and just make it very easy for a researcher to say, oh, hey, I want to do a proof of attribution or provide an attribution to this paper that I just found. Here's the Artifacts widget. Let me just cycle that here real quick, and then it kind of goes. Or I just wrote a couple pages of an interesting white paper, and I want to do a proof of existence on that. And Google Docs, boom, that just goes. So that's an important priority for us. And then on the other elements of the platform that we will also be spending a lot of time developing, and again we're working aggressively right now, is building out more robust kind of analytics and data display functionality for, the depths of the attributions that we will be, ultimately getting as the network grows, so that somebody can very easily look and say, oh, look, I just, here's all my data set citations. Here's posters or conference proceedings or, PowerPoint presentations, that people have found and provided me attribution for, so that I can, really dig in and see, what other people are looking at, what's been successful, who I might be able to collaborate with, and then also get a better understanding of my overall scholarly contribution.
Okay, and as far as the company itself, what does the roadmap look like the next 12 to 24 months for you guys?
Well, great question. I mean, we've got to go do a round of fundraising, so we're going to get going on that next month. And then we've got to grow the team a little bit so that we can go accomplish much of what I just told you and a fair bit more. Get a little bit more, not only on the product development side, but a little product management and probably a healthy dose of marketing resource, to help us really drive that network growth. And then we'll continue to be developing partnerships. So looking, for got a lot of great conversations with publishers, with universities, with, again, some of these, service providers or software as a service providers that play the ecosystem, and also funders. And so, there's I don't know, it's a varied landscape that we've got to go after to, kind of help shift this lens again from just the published article to, everything else that kind of builds up to it relevant.
And so in terms of, I guess, any final thoughts for our listeners, what's the big reasons that they should come to Artifacts and make use of the platform?
Well, the big reasons are come, share your work easily, safely, and beneficially. Build your reputation in real time, find collaborators, speed research. Those are the big three. And we hope that the community responds. The people we've been talking to and the ones who've been on there so far seems to respond and seems to be positive. And so we hope that continues. Okay,
great. And what's the best method of contact to get in touch with you guys and the company and find out more about how to get involved?
Well, our website at artifacts.ai, that's a great place to start. At any time, from the website or even from the platform, if you go in there, you can send us feedback. You can hit us anytime at info@artifacts.ai. That comes into my email, email address, so I see those and respond to them. And then we'd love to hear the feedback. We love to hear, if somebody finds something that needs to be fixed, we're right on top of that, or other ideas or priorities that we ought to consider. We love hearing the feedback.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank you, Courtney, for coming on to the podcast and telling us about Artifacts and giving us all this great information and just giving up of your time.
Yeah, pleasure. We're happy to talk about Artifacts all the time, so thanks for giving us the chance to do it. I appreciate it.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.